this passes muster, and that's going to be to the discretion of the chairperson of the hearing committee. If the complaint passes muster, then it will go to the hearing committee for discussion. But if it's on its face, what they might consider a frivolous complaint, I would leave that to the discretion of the chairperson of the hearing committee to make that determination as to whether it needs to go to the full hearing committee for determination. And that's the second part of the motion. Any discussion on the motion?
So am I to understand this, that the chairperson will determine if that complaint is founded or unfounded?
No, it's essentially, look, these are very serious issues. And the code of conduct violation, given the penalty schedule that has just been enacted by this board, is something that needs to be taken very seriously. In other words, this is not, if I were to say the burden of proof in a civil case is 51%, this is more like a reasonable doubt burden of proof, because there's serious penalties here to be levied. And all I'm saying is that if somebody comes forward with a code of conduct complaint, if there are 15 complaints, and the chairperson of the hearing committee looks at it and says, you know, this is not going to arise to the level where somebody did something very serious and intentional, then I don't think this is necessary to bring this to the hearing committee. I'm giving, my motion is going to give the chair of the hearing committee that discretion so as not to have the complaint be evaluated by the hearing committee. Because I think, and again, this is a discretionary move by the board, I think, and that's my motion, I'm very concerned about multiple complaints against people, and these are serious penalties. So I would just ask the chairperson of the hearing committee that this board delegate some discretion to them as to whether they think the complaint is significant enough and well-founded enough to go to the hearing committee. Because once it goes to the hearing committee, it can always result in a penalty. But if it doesn't go to the hearing committee, then it doesn't result in a penalty. We need to trust the hearing committee chairperson to do that. That's my point.
I would just like to add that any code of conduct violation that goes to the hearing committee be recorded and available for view after the fact.
We voted for that. Huh? We voted for that, not to record this.
All I'm saying is a code of conduct violation, okay, I want to feel very comfortable. If I was ever in that situation, I would want a recordation to make sure that anything that came down was done in a fair and reasonable manner and it wasn't biased. And I think that anybody that goes before that committee for an issue like this should at least have that background.
Well, that wasn't part of my motion. I'm not gonna get into the hearing committee's
Only for
let me
this.
just finish. I'm not going to get into the hearing committee's decision as to whether or not somebody can take a meeting. Okay. All we talked about was that we were not going to broadcast live those meetings. And what I think is very, very serious is that when you get in a hearing committee, if somebody feels like they're being taken advantage of, that person may hire a lawyer and they may end up bringing a court reporter. And we can't prevent a court reporter from attending that meeting. However, I don't want everybody sitting there having personal information that we have a duty to keep personal, like delinquencies and other things that we have Grand Leach Bliley requirements. We cannot have that stuff broadcast. So I do have a problem where we're talking about members of our community going in that don't have an interest in the proceeding and videotaping a hearing committee meeting. I don't think that this board is in favor of that. I think that's what the vote last week was against.
I'm just talking about code of conduct violations.
Well, it's
Nothing
the same
else.
thing. It's the same thing.
Okay.
Anything that the hearing committee does, we are delegating authority so that the board does not take action. If the board takes action, then arguably we're opening ourselves to liability, and I'd rather not have us do that.
Also, I have to say, people of our community are volunteering for this committee, and in good conscience, they are, through the code of conduct, saying that they are not going to be biased and are going to do the best job possible. So we have to.
How do you plan on proceeding? How do you plan on proceeding with the code of conduct violation? Like if someone feels that they're a victim of that, what is your plan to proceed with that? They write an email to somebody, or how like in the middle of the meeting, like for example, if you're in the middle of a meeting and someone says, I take offense to that, that's a code of conduct violation, and they fly off the handle, how do we proceed?
It's a very good question. What people have asked me before, and again, I would be interested in the hearing committee's proposal on how to deal with these so that they are put in the best possible position to evaluate the code of conduct complaint ahead of time as what I would call the sort of probable cause review by the chairperson. I would ask Sharon as a chairperson to let me know what elements would be necessary in a complaint. Up until now, people that have said that they think that somebody's committed a code of conduct violation have sent me emails with a very detailed diatribe of exactly what was the background for it. And because that comes to the president, what my plan is to send that directly to the chairperson of the hearing committee. So that's how it's taken place so far. But I would ask the hearing committee to come up with the elements of a form that could be given to a person who says that they believe they have a code of conduct violation, because I think that form should also consider requiring that person to swear under penalty of perjury that what they're putting in the application or the code of conduct complaint is true. So that if it's determined that it's not true, then that's a problem for them, and that should be a problem. So, yes, so I think just deal with the question that we
I
have.
think that's a very good idea. The reason for that is, it sounds clear and cut, but it kind of is a gray area. Such as if someone's making a joke and someone takes that the wrong way, that can be perceived as. So if you have a form like that and you're sworn from the road.
What I would ask is the hearing committee to, when they come and bring their report to the board at the end of February, I know it's time is short, may not be able to put together a form in the next 2 weeks, but I would ask the hearing committee to consider that and as soon as possible make a recommendation to the board as to the adoption of a form, or just tell us what form you want or what elements you need, so that I can make sure that anybody who comes forward with this kind of complaint, because they're going to come to me as the president, and I'll direct it to the chairperson of the hearing committee. That's what I would ask. Any other comments from up here? No? Yes, Mike?
When you're given a code of conduct violation for somebody, the person that's being accused of a violation, when are they informed and when are they given the information and when are they told who's
That's a good question. I would ask the hearing committee to CC the person who's the subject of the code of conduct violation or discipline. They need to be CC'd on the form.
and also
Because they need to be able to confront through this process, just like a criminal defendant would. You're entitled to confront your accusers. I think it's very important. I would ask the hearing committee to affirm at the next meeting that this should not be an anonymous process.
Can you change your word from confront? Confront isn't a good word.
my next question is that if a person feels that they've had a code of conduct violation process against them, or somebody has done something that is, I feel that there should be some type of penalty to the person filing a complaint if they don't keep it in the strict confines of the board president and the hearing committee, for that reason, that it's an unvalidated complaint at that point, and at that point it's nothing but hearsay and unsubstantiated, and you can trash somebody's name through the community by doing that and spreading rumor.
The hearing committee can maybe take that into consideration and figure out whether there's anything that we can do in terms of deterrence, I guess, is probably has to be a recommendation from the hearing committee during the report process, obviously. Anybody else have any?
Just quickly, I'd like to say, as far as, I think that when the person is CC'd with a complaint against them, I think they shouldn't know who did it until if it goes to a hearing, and then they should be able to, talk to the person at the hearing. Otherwise, I don't know.
Well, they could be told who did it without and given a no contact.
I'll make a comment. The problem with that is if someone knows, like, okay, if someone's a hot-headed individual and they're aware if someone's making a complaint against them and they see them on a consistent basis, it's probably not the brightest idea to let that person know that person has an issue with them. It's going to create more of a conflict when they see each other.
Well, these are issues that I would ask the hearing committee.
Right, no, I'm not saying.
Yes, I mean, at the end of the day,
Then they
So it's not meant to be an intentional act type term. It's meant to be, you're entitled to know who this is, because this is just my personal feeling. I think anonymity is not fair to the accused. That's my personal opinion. But I would ask the hearing committee to look at that issue. Is another comment? And then I'll get to, I'm done.
Okay. My concern regarding the hearing committee within the house is, within the community, a lot of people know each other, and that can create a discomfort either way, or the person sent from the hearing committee is a friend of the person on the hearing committee, or the opposite, they are really enemies, and then that would create discomfort. So
I think it's a valid point, but at that point, I think the hearing committee person that has a conflict of interest needs to announce that and needs to abstain. And that's why I think at the end of February, we're going to have resumes from the hearing committee members, and we're going to make sure that we reappoint. And that will be an item on the agenda for the end of February meeting. But the other thing is on the flip side, I would say that's exactly why a code of conduct violation complaint needs to be very well thought out, because there are going to be significant ramifications to everybody that's involved. So,
And are we gonna publicize the results?
Yeah, I would ask that, contact the lawyer to make sure that if they are given the name of the person ahead of time, and that person decides to do something, that we are not held liable in any way, the association, for anything that person may do.
well, it's a very good point. I can do that. The whole point of all of this is a deterrent effect.
Right.
And so, you know, think before you put in a code of conduct violation claim against somebody. This is not the, you know, this is not the time to play around. This is serious stuff. Okay, let me take some questions from the audience. Yes,
I've
ma'am.
got a question, so, for the people that don't know me, everybody knows me as Tilly, but my real name is Carolyn Romandelli. I'm on the hearing committee, I've been on it from the very beginning, to give you some background and stuff. The hearing committee has always been a committee that has acted between a violation given out, okay, and trying to hear people who have the violation against them. So Nancy gets a violation, she then comes to us at the hearing committee and says, hey, wait a minute, you know I got a violation for a dirty roof. Now in this case, I would take myself out of the decision because I know Nancy, okay? But assuming I didn't know her, she would come in and she would discuss it with us to say, hey, look, you know, I've had financial issues. I can do it next month. Is that okay? Okay, so we'll hear her case and we'll make a decision to say, yes, let's extend it or let's not extend it. So we've always been, the hearing committee has always been in the middle of, the violation has already been sent out, and we're talking to the people that want to come to the meeting, which isn't usually very many, and saying, okay, fine, this person came, we'll hear them. We may still send a violation out to them anyhow. We've been in between. It almost sounds like what you're saying now for the code of conduct is you're looking for us to make a decision as to whether or not technically the violation has actually happened or not. And then how can we as a hearing committee then hear people, if I have a complaint against Fran, or he has a complaint against Fran on something, you know, I'll pick on Fran because I know Fran, I know she doesn't take it personally. But if they have a problem and stuff, they then can't come to us because we said there is a code of conduct violation. So how is the hearing committee going to be able to come between the two people or actually come up with an outcome? If we've already stated, that's like us saying, Nancy, you've got a dirty roof. Well then, Nancy doesn't have a choice. When she comes to the meeting, we already decided she has a dirty roof. She better be the best con artist that she can to try to change our mind. So I'm only concerned about conflict now if, you know, if we're making a decision whether or not there is a code of conduct, you know, violation, then how can we, should we, maybe we don't hear. Maybe we just make a decision amongst ourselves to say, yes, there is, or no, there's not.
Well,
You know what I mean? It's kind of like in between.
Sure. I think that the.
Because a lot of people think that on the hearing committee that we put out violations to people, that we're the ones that send out the violations, and we are definitely not.
Yeah, let me see if I can put some clarity to it. The way I see this is mechanically, somebody makes a complaint against somebody.
Okay.
Whether the complainer is on the hearing committee or not, a complaint is made.
Yeah.
That complaint is then forwarded to the chairperson of the hearing committee. The chairperson of the hearing committee reads the complaint and looks at the complaint and uses their own judgment and discretion as to whether this needs to go to the hearing committee. If it does, then I think the complaint is then given to the hearing committee. They need to review the complaint. Each member of the committee needs to review it ahead of time. And then the people that are the subject of the complaint need to be at the hearing committee meeting. And there needs to be questions and essentially almost like inquisition by the jury of the complainer and the complainee. And then the two people are dismissed from the meeting. This is my proposal. The committee needs to decide what it wants to do. But my understanding would be that then those two people are dismissed from the hearing committee, and the hearing committee then decides what it wants to do in its own comfort and quietness as is required.
Yeah.
I don't see anything different than that. If somebody on the hearing committee has a conflict of interest, they need to recuse themselves.
Then they just get out.
But, I mean, I don't see it make it any more complex than that.
Okay.
I mean, unless I'm missing something, this would be my proposal for the hearing committee, but the hearing committee needs to decide how to handle that. With respect to the violation has already occurred, presumably. Just like somebody has already committed a problem that comes to the hearing committee based on a citation or a notice. So I kind of view them similarly from the other side of the coin, but that's just my opinion. Any other questions from the audience? Okay. Is this another question on the motion?
It's
Right,
a question
discussion.
on, this is on discussion still. So under the proposal that you just discussed with the audience, the person that's the subject of the complaint, from what I was hearing, their first opportunity to rebut or respond to the complaint is done in person at the committee meeting?
If the chairperson has determined that it rises to the level that it should be heard by the committee, yes.
Well, that's what I said.
How-
That person is gonna see if it's founded or unfounded, then it goes into the hearing committee. So the chairperson is gonna look at it and say, oh, this has got a very solid complaint, it's got pictures, it's got emails, it's got a letter here from that, whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So then the chairperson is gonna say, okay, this is a valid complaint, this is a valid charge, then she's gonna give it to the hearing.
And it's serious enough to warrant a 90-day suspension. I think that's the litmus test to be invoked by the chairperson before it even goes to
the
a
hearing.
hearing.
But the litmus test needs to have the person that's being complained or accused, they need to have an opportunity to present at the same time. Otherwise, the hearing committee is going in with all the information based on what was just discussed. The hearing committee is going in with nothing but one side of the story before any discussion. That's, if I'm not mistaken, when a case goes before a judge or whatnot, both the prosecutor and the defendant have opening arguments to determine cause, correct?
Correct. And all I'm saying is that the board is not going to direct the hearing committee chairperson how to evaluate a code of conduct complaint. I think your point is well taken, that if the chairperson may decide to contact the subject of the complaint before they make a decision as to whether there is a committee. But that's up to the chairperson. I would assume that the chairperson would want to hear both sides of the story before they determine that there's probable cause to send it to a hearing committee meeting for 90-day suspension. It would seem to me that she would want to hear both sides. But again, that's not the board directing the hearing committee how to act. Does that clear up your question?
Yeah.
That's a lot of responsibility on the chairperson.
The chairperson?
To say, well, I think this is valid, I mean.
But they're not being disciplinary at that point. The
Well-
chairperson is simply saying it needs to go for discussion and we need further information.
The point is that code of conduct violations are very serious.